Get ready to rumble!
Welcome, Mere Mortals, to another Mere Mortals themed episode. Today we are going to be talking about climate change.
Change.
Yeah, this is an uncontroversial topic right here.
Good.
For the Mere Mortals.
We're going to talk global warming, but we're talking climate change.
Yeah, exactly. So the basis for this discussion is on two things, one of which Juan has seen. So I mentioned in the previous themed episode, we would be talking about the video, How to Make the World Better Really, with Dr. Bjorn Lomborg from Jordan Peterson's, I guess it's his podcast, also his YouTube channel, so you can get that there. I've also been reading his book, False Alarm. How climate change panic costs us trillions, hurts the poor, and fails to fix the planet. Damn. No
big claims.
No holds there. So I'll sort of just kick us off with almost a little bit of a definition, I think.
Okay.
So I wanted to try and get what actually is climate change. What is it? Let's nail it down.
So why are we calling it climate change, not global warming? Maybe that's the first. Is that the first thing, or are we defining climate change?
I guess I don't know if so. You've obviously never heard of the difference between the two.
I have heard the difference.
Okay.
I think it'd be good to clarify for the listeners.
So I believe it was something like global warming was deceptive in a way because it's not just warming everywhere. It's sort of like the carbon emissions are warming the planet as a whole, but in certain areas you will see variation. So it's more about the variations in weather, which is why they said climate change and not global warming. So I think it was more just a like an optics thing. We want to make this look better.
Okay, right, gotcha.
Like,
is it not true though that global warming, like it is as a holistically, the Earth, it is warming up in fullness? Like if you take all averages of all temperatures on Earth, it is warming up. That's why I thought that also came into terminology of it.
Yeah.
So global warming is like the literal definition of the globe is warming up more.
You'd think so, but I don't think people.
I don't think they conceptualize it in that way.
Yeah,
which is weird.
Yeah,
and that seems weird to me. But
I think they put it in the other terms,
context, which is fine. Yeah. Cool. So climate change.
Yep. So climate change. So basically, there's no like definition in the dictionary, so you have to sort of just go off what is sort of out there, I guess. So for me, it was sort of saying something along long term. So it's decades or more. So if a hurricane comes and knocks down your house tomorrow, that's not climate change, my friend. That is just a storm. Yeah. It's a large scale shift in the weather patterns, and then there's the other bit, which is like caused by global greenhouse gas emissions. So 90% CO2, carbon dioxide, and methane. Yeah. Okay. So essentially, it's talking about, and when people use it in general, they're talking from roughly, let's just say the 1900s onwards, definitely since the middle part of the last century, the 1950s, there was a noticeable increase in the weather. I believe they're using like temperatures of the ocean is what
as like their measure.
Yeah, okay. But I imagine they use all sorts of other ones as well.
It's good that you called out that's got to be longer than, it's got to be a couple of years, not just a few years, because some people might get stuck into, well, there's El Nino and El Niña. Is that climate change? And it's like, no, well, that's just like a phenomenon that we see occur, and it is influenced by climate change in terms of its longevity and that. But and I don't know exactly what causes that, but there are things in terms of the wind patterns and temperatures that cause El Nino and El Niña. But that's not really climate change. I would put that in it's a phenomenon like a hurricane, but obviously it's a multi-year thing. But climate change is, you're looking maybe decades, centuries type of deal.
Yeah. I mean, the real problem with it is that it's such a gradual long-term thing. Like it's sort of like cancer. There's probably cancer cells growing in my body right now, but what can I really do about it? Can I actually know about it? Is there, can I blame the pimple I get on my cheek because of the cancer? It's sort of like, no.
Maybe not. No.
That's not the best way of thinking about it.
Now, I just wanted to confirm as well. So if people did go and listen to Bjorn and Jordan Peterson.
Dr.
Peterson's conversation. It was also about donations and calculations of money and global and climate change.
Yeah. So now, it's not just, I suppose I would have put in the title something like climate change
and donating money
and priorities and why climate change should not be a priority.
Yeah, okay, all right. Because mine's going to be an interesting one for the mere mortal moment if it wasn't going to be that. But just wanted to clarify for people, there was obviously a conversation about why climate change didn't really fit into the top ways of giving away money for donations and for charity purposes.
Exactly.
I mean, I want to kind of get something off my chest here on that particular conversation. So,
what's he going to get off?
You know, if you watch the video of it, he was kind of showing the diagram of the bars. And in essence, the way I understand it is him and a bunch of economists went around and said, okay, for your $1, what's the most benefit you can do? So, you know, $60. So it could be, I don't know if it was malaria or typhoid.
Oh, damn it.
I believe it was typhoid. It was typhoid that he was talking about that was like the biggest killer. And we see it as such a treatable thing now in the developed world, but in the more undeveloped areas, typhoid's still like a massive killer. 1.6 million people, I think you were saying. So it's a massive killer that's easily fixable. So that's where most of the money that can be done, right?
Either typhoid or tuberculosis.
Oh, maybe it might be one of those. One of the T ones, one of the T killers.
Yeah.
So, okay, cool. I can get on board with that. And again, as long as you can understand, listener, it was one. So if you give $1, what's the benefit?
Yeah.
But there was a couple of things that I wanted to pick at with his thoughts. Now, I'm not opposing what the economist said, but I was intrigued in some of it. So I wanted to ask you some questions in relation to it to see what you thought.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not sure that's the best place to start. I reckon we'll get into that in a little bit.
Okay. Well, I want to set that context to the listeners. That if you didn't go and check that out, it was basically a comparison of how best to spend the money. There was a big portion of conversation around climate change, why it wasn't fitting into that, and why a lot of people cry out about it.
I did print that, but I forgot to bring it. So
good.
Whoops. Anywho, I want to get general thoughts first. So, climate change, like your thoughts, just your impressions. Let's just even say before
even watching that.
Yeah. So like 3 days ago, however long. Were you apocalyptic? Were you sort of middle of the road? Were you a denier? Juan's a climate denier. That's what I'm sort of hearing.
I would have settled on saying that I definitely believe that there's climate change happening, but that it's slow enough that I'm not personally contributing any money towards it. So like if we're talking specifically money towards it, I'm not personally contributing money to it, but I will change some of my behaviors so that I can better my, I guess, carbon footprint, if you will, that level. So I'll do some things in relation, not all of it, and I'm certainly not spending like my own money in any charitable way towards that. Yeah, that's kind of how they. But in a broad climate change, green energy, I do have like, if I looked at a view, I'm not looking at it apocalyptic. I'm seeing as in 100 years' time, we'll do a transition over to more green energy, and in terms of the impacts to the earth, it's like we've seen the video from David Attenborough and a lot of the conversations that's happening around that, but I'm not like spooked. I'm not like, whoa, I'm going to die in 2 years. Like it's not, and maybe it's a case of I can't picture what is going to happen to like my kids or something to that extent. So I might be playing into it. What about you? Before you watch that,
Juan's going to be the first to drown people. He's going to buy a house right near.
I've got to say, if it was me and Karen stranded in the ocean, Karen's dying first. That is 100% guaranteed.
That is definitely guaranteed. I would say, look, I would put it in this way: if there was like a gamut of, the two extremes, and then everything in the middle, I would probably be more towards the climate denier than rather than the extreme, like, let's really do something right now.
Yeah. So I get you.
I definitely don't deny it. So I'll put that out there. But I would, in my list of concerns, I would put it way beneath everything else. And I would even say, I barely use it in everyday speech. So if you hear, all the time, like I just hear in random podcasts, people talking like an architecture podcast I was just listening to today, and they're talking about climate change. What are we going to do with making sure architecture is designed in this eco-friendly way and stuff like that? Like, it's just not affecting me. It's not in my thoughts at all. So I'm not going to bring it up. So there's probably about the only time you'll ever hear me really talking about it.
One interesting thing about it though was, so similarly related to that. So let's say you did watch it. You've now watched that Bjorn, Dr. Peterson kind of conversation, read some of the books about it. Obviously, might be more influenced by false alarm. But I kind of take it with, let's just say in the immediacy terms, let's just say tuberculosis or typhoid, whichever one it is, say tuberculosis. Within, let's just say in a year, if you go, I want to spend money to, or let's do something about climate change versus let's do something about this disease, this virus, whatever you want to pick. In the immediacy in the 1 year, that one's going to do the best deal in comparison to the other. Like absolutely, for sure. If you start extending out like 10, 20 years, maybe this one's still good. You know, this one's still doing a betterment to the world than the other one. But I think just the long term, like if you really put long term outlook onto something, let's just say if you were to say, okay, how much of a priority is it for you about climate change in the next 10 years? And you would like, well, not as much as, list whatever you want to name, cool, whatever. But what if someone said to you, okay, in the next million years, not for you, but civilization in general, what's going to impact more? Climate change or, like, let's say, typhoid or tuberculosis? Now, I think I wouldn't say like, oh, it's definitely climate change. Like, okay, there might be a conversation that'll be like, okay, well, if there's 1 million people dying each year and it's, let's say, I don't know, 1 million years, that's theoretically 1 billion people that die in that time, maybe, right? But then the other one's like, oh, well, everybody dies on Earth if we don't fix this. And it's like, oh, okay, that one has more value in a human life, if you want to call it that, and everyone's equal. But that's like a really protracted like length of time where we personally don't give a shit about that. But obviously it's going to affect generations well down the line. That's the only time I could be like, okay, like we can be alarmists at that level if you wanted to extend it. But it's so far gone beyond our generations and what could happen in between there that it almost seems to me like, why is there so much worry and alarm to it when there's so much more immediate things within like centuries within us that we could do?
Yeah, I'll just call that dumb. Like if you're alarmed about that, you should also be alarmed about solar flares. You should also be alarmed about meteors. You should also be alarmed about all the other things. I'm gonna draw us back a bit because I know you're itching to get to the priorities of other stuff, but no, we need to talk about some of the data and science of climate change. So this is some of the stuff I've been researching. So yeah, there was this video in particular, and I listened to this ages ago, probably in 2017
when it first came out.
And I said, holy shit, man, this guy makes really clear sense. I want to know more. So I ended up reading his book, Cool It. You can see the review on that. And then this one right here, which there'll be a review out soon. And so basically, he uses the climate sciences, reports from climate science scientists in the UN. So basically all of his stuff is like, it's not him generating any of these reports or where he gets the data from. He's taking it from the UN, which I would say is, I don't know, it's about as unbiased as you're going to get considering it's just like a collection of countries doing it. So yes, I would say that it's as unbiased as you're going to get. Yeah, that's what I mean. Obviously it's still
Is it going to be unbiased? No. Is it going to be as unbiased as you can get?
Yeah.
Yes.
So you have to just work with what you got, essentially. True. And that's a lot of what he talks about. We don't have infinite resources to fix this problem, because if we did, we'll fix it. Yeah, we'll snap our fingers and it's done. So a couple of things. So I would just say this is like the broad one, which is most of what he was seeing in terms of error scales and what's most likely to happen in 100 years time. So in 2100, there will be a 4-degree Celsius rise in the climate just as a whole. And to fix that, it would require 2.9% of the world's GDP. So that year, from then on, it would sort of require 2.9% to fix.
Year on year.
Yeah.
I was like, and I got a little bit, I thought, 2.9% GDP, for that time. But just to be clear, it's 2.9% of GDP each year, every year for 100 years.
Yep. We also need to be clear, though, that's in 2100 GDP. So that would be a
whatever inflation higher levels than it is today.
It'd be a very significant amount, but then you'd also have to realize everyone on Earth, like hopefully the poor people even more so, and that's what it's trending towards. But everyone would be, I don't know, it's like 3 or 4 times richer, essentially. Like that's what it is. Like GDP keeps on rising, and so yes, the amount it'll cost, but it'll also be like, I don't know, it'd be a lot more money than today. It would be a lot more money than today, but I'm not sure the feeling would still be the same. It's almost like, you know, if in 1800 you had to give up 3% of your GDP, that would maybe be like one of your cows or something, and then you starve. Whereas right now, you know, 3% of my GDP, you know, I can just give that away. That's like, that's not a big deal. So I'm imagining it would sort of have that same feeling. Like everyone's just so much richer that it's like, you know, stubbing your toe now or whatever. Yep. So it is a problem. And I guess one of the big assumptions he uses is that GDP is a good metric for well-being. So a lot of this about what he talks about in this book, and as well as in the podcast episode, was equating GDP and using like economic resources as a way to measure well-being. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. And you can basically plot GDP against any of the improvements that Western societies have seen. And it's like, okay, yes, GDP is very closely linked to better healthcare, better education,
better other things,
longer lives, all this sorts of stuff. So yes, money isn't the be all and end all, but
certainly helps.
It fucking helps a lot. It helps a lot. So this is I guess where it gets into the priorities, and where he's saying, look, yes, climate change is an issue, but we need to do a cost benefit analysis and see, is it the biggest issue right now? And there's actually getting it sort of into the, you know, effective altruism. Some of the other books I read, More from Less, and I think The Most Good You Can Do by Peter Singer. I'm not sure I actually fully read that one, but essentially saying, putting that constraint on, saying you can't fix everything.
What's the most you can do with the finite amount of resources that you have?
So now we're on to priorities. So one, you can go nuts. You can talk all about all your...
So here's so it was nicely you laid out the sort of the numbers as well with it, because one of the things that I won't say I took offense, but it's just interesting how you view it. So again, he was looking at $1 spent equals X amount of dollars, and I think can't really remember off the top of my head, but so how $1 to $36 was like a really good return. Right.
So how we would sort of do this was saying like, okay, try and capture as much of the good that would come from something. So, for example, giving like the pill, contraceptives to women who don't have it in poorer countries. One thing this allows them to do is to choose when they want to have a child. Like they have a lot more option, so they can give birth to a child like in a more optimal time for them. And that, you know, the child lives on, these benefits accrue from that
down the generations,
and they try and capture like as much of the good things that can happen from that. And it's real weird because you're putting dollars on people's lives, you're putting dollars on sickness, you're putting dollars on all that sort of stuff. But that's essentially what they were trying to do. And he also makes this pretty clear. He wasn't claiming $1 equals 1,000. It's more like the scale of things.
Yeah, it's more the scaling, because I think it was suggesting like, okay, well, if you take into account generational, it still scales in the same way. So I was like, okay, cool, I'm on board with this. Where I started thinking about was, and it might sound weird, but it was very human focused. Right? Okay. So it was very human focused.
One's worried about the robots.
So this is, the robots, where about them? So he made the point that in this whole setup, you know, a life is a life across Earth. So, you know, if someone was in America, say in New York, really rich, you know, they're exactly the same worth as someone in Uganda, in Nigeria, whatever. And I can get on board with that. Totally cool. Now, I haven't fully read the report that they created and all the documents. So if they actually got to this level, I praise them. Someone called me out on this. But first I started thinking about, okay, well, what about if, you know, there's 1,000 people with tuberculosis, but what about what's their potential for helping out humanity as compared to maybe another 1,000 somewhere else that maybe if they, I don't know, got treated for kidney cancer or something like that, they would go on to then be able to benefit the earth even more. So it was less about just them as a human and more about like, okay, what about that particular person's ability, the tendrils to go and help out even more things in the world. So I was like, one, wasn't super concerned about it, but I was like, oh, I wonder if they thought about that. I don't know if you looked into it, but I just have no idea if they looked into it.
No. They took the pure
view. Okay.
A life solace.
So I was like, okay, cool. But the other one that I think most people, I don't have this view, but I was like, well, note it down because I wanted to talk about it was climate change. So a lot of people might think about it as, oh, no, people are dying, right? People are dying over here, easily worth more. Like, there you go. There's the worth. But many people have a view of, yes, but what about the millions of animals you're killing? What about all the people, all the fishes that are dying because of the warmer weather? What about all the animals that are getting, destroyed because their environments are going away, et cetera, et cetera? So I thought, that's an interesting point because I don't have a dog in the fight about that, but I could see that view where someone might say, okay, well, you're looking at this from a very humanistic perspective, like a human civilization, that's the betterment. So betterment of human civilization is less people dying. But what about the charities that are sponsoring for, I don't know, recreations of whole environmental setups or rainforests or something else where there's billions of animals that are being killed or something and they're going to return. So do you think, again, would you say you would consider animal lives as it? Because I would say, okay, no, you can't. You have to bound it. But I can see why people would go, ooh, have you considered this? And have a fight about that.
Yeah, I would. That would be like an impossible ethic thing for me. If you're putting animal lives even close to human lives in terms of worth, like it would have to be on such a huge scale. So maybe, yes, you could say that for the fish dying because of warmer weathers, but that's not the problem, man. Like the problem is us overfishing. The problem, like the orangutans aren't dying because it's a 1 degree warmer.
It's because
it's because we're destroying the habitat.
And so this was
totally separate.
Yeah, so that was like the thing for me. I was like, oh, is it the direct climate change problem, or is it that we as humans are doing other things that are making that happen? But what it got me thinking into even more was, right? So I was like, okay, well, let's just say the charity for stopping illegal fisheries or something else in that manner, where if that continues, maybe we'll have no fish because we kill the alpha predators, which once you start killing alpha predators, like pretty much you kill the sequence of the whole structure. So let's say that case, and let's just say that's feeding, I don't know, a percentage of the population of the world. And if you stop that, there's a real chance you're going to kill even more people because that didn't get stopped. So it took me, I was a little bit, it always concerns me when you have to do calculations on like, oh yes, it's a human to a human. So I'm like, wow, what about all the other considerations of all the other possible permutations? Like, do you, like half far down the rabbit hole, do you stop and go, okay, this possibility is now reached a threshold where we're just not going to look at it anymore? Because you make the claim about asteroids hitting Earth, right? So it was like, okay, well, we're going to track whatever it is, 90% of asteroids or meteors, and we're not going to do the next 10% because it's too much money. And, we've all just pretty much established like, okay, well, if that 10% gets us, well, okay, we're all dead. Cool. But you wouldn't go that far. So I think the same rationality has to apply here, which I think they did. But I could see a lot of people arcing up their back about it and be like, oh, well, what happens this? And like, all these people are dying. Yeah.
I don't think so, man.
Did you see some of the comments on the YouTube thing?
I went through some, but not all.
So I've seen replies to Bjorn's thing about that. So I'm like, okay, I can see that. But I wanted to get your view, which I thought was going to be similar to mine, where I'm like, oh, I don't believe you can make that claim. And he's distinctly saying this is like $1 for a human life to the comparison of what you can do to something else.
Yeah. And once again, like fish, for example, you brought that up a couple of times. Fact check me on this, but I believe most fish that we eat isn't from the sea. It's factory farm now. Does that sound true to you? I've heard that somewhere, but I'm not. I would assume yes. I would have to assume yes. Yeah. Anywho, I can't get on board with any of that. Like that just sounds so. There's a weird anti-human streak which some people have, which I find disturbing. And definitely you were bordering on dangerous territory there with which humans are more valuable. That's sort of
well, and that's the other thing as well. Like it's good that and that's the other thing, because I say See, I think that would get into some dangerous territory because they're like, oh, you're saying that another human is more worth it than another human. So if you look at it as like two biological creatures, no, like it's exactly the same. Cool. But then if your KPIs, if your calculations are saying, well, it's who can do better, and you go, well, this person here, like let's imagine you're comparing, let's say
let's get it out in the open. You're comparing 1,000 Ugandans versus 1,000 like
well,
Americans.
even go more like this. Go Bill Gates versus a Ugandan.
Yeah,
and you go, let's say both of them have cancer. Both of them, or like let's just say, for some weird technical reason, like Bill Gates got cancer, the Ugandan's got kidney failure, or like some sort of kidney disease. Now you got two charities, and like they would be ranked. Let's just say that there are only two humans on Earth that have this. So the charities for each of them is just literally just them.
Yeah.
Right now, under the calculation of the one that Bjorn would do, theoretically they'd be worth the same.
Yeah, but that's not what he's doing though.
No, and the thing is, he has some other nuanced things, definitely in the calculations of what he's doing. I was thinking, do you think they take into account like what you can do to the world as a large? Like where do you draw the line at?
Honestly, man, I think you're bringing up stuff that's like not even important. Like,
okay, all right.
It's getting
good.
You can bring up all sorts of things. I'm not sure that's
well, yeah. I actually,
helpful.
I mean, for me, I like from a lot of the notes I took was that in the economic and nature logical take that they do, I think there could be things missing the nuance, and I'd be just interested in how where the thought process went in the nuance on the little details of where they went. Oh yeah, we're doing they themselves have to make a choice on this is what we're taking as the economical cost basis, as opposed to looking at this.
Send him an email, man.
I'm sending him an email.
You can find out.
Send these economists an email.
So a couple of things with regards to priorities. So yeah, how many dollars can $1 of I guess charity or goodwill do? So there's just assuming there's a fund set up, which is like the UN has X amount of money from nations just giving it to it. Where are we going to put this money? So I found it real interesting. They were talking that they had 169 targets, but which ones actually make a difference? And then, you can, if you look at the graph, I'll put it up, you can see like climate change is just way down the bottom, $1.
I didn't actually see where I was.
Yeah, there was a couple of things he was saying. There was like $1 actually doesn't even provide a benefit. It was sort of like a couple of cents back. So you're just pissing your money down the drain, essentially.
Yeah.
Trying to force something through, it's almost like, you want to, there's a bunch of stuff on the road. You want to like pick up the small rocks, get them out of the way easy. Okay, that's good. Then you ask, the dude, oh yeah, can you pick up the granite stone that's right there and move that? And it's like, well, yeah, he can. If he pushes it for 20 years, maybe he'll get it to move. Yeah. So it's sort of like that. Like you're just applying the same amount of energy into something and it's just not happening. And yeah, it was funny that some of the decisions could inadvertently hurt the poor as well. So for example, really pushing to minimize energy consumption. That's a good thing, right? Yeah. We want to minimize the amount of carbon we're putting in through fossil fuels and whatnot.
I'm sure the people in poverty really enjoy that.
Exactly.
Like, hey, you're getting water from your one truck. How about you get no water?
Yeah. And it talks about, not so much in the podcast, but in this book, he's just got plenty of examples where it's like, you try and take away, 10% of energy from a poor person, and it's just like they've got nothing. Then it's essentially like they've already got nothing, and that 10% is just wiping them out completely, sort of thing.
And I wanted to ask you this question because, see, I personally found I didn't like Bjorn. I was like, well, I don't like this dude. Like if I met him in person, I'd be like, I don't like. Very logical.
I thought he was a mad dude.
I was like, really very logical dude. But I think some of the ways that he came across some things, I was like, it irked me. But I've only ever seen a video. So that's why I was like, oh, check me on this, maybe on the books. But in that same scenario, the easy comeback on that devil's advocate is like, well, of course, idiot. Like you wouldn't take 10% off a poor person. You take 20% off the rich people. Yeah,
but that's not what people, when it's like, we all need to, stop climate change. We need to stop polluting. It's the poor people that are polluting as well. So that's where you need to take away the big gain, the big easy.
Right. Okay.
the
Okay.
easy
So
ones to take
that's
away
the
from.
easy wins as well. Just
Yeah.
taking it. Okay. Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Right,
it's
gotcha.
it's as you get richer, it gets to a point where it starts going like, oh no, we've reached such a point that we can now care about the environment, and then it's your energy consumption starts diving down, or your ability to offset how much energy you're using increases as well.
And I'll just introspect on this point as well as we're talking about it, because see, for me, and I think most people will feel this way, probably even more so than I'm feeling it, where when someone starts talking about climate change, you get all feverish about it and be like, hold on, no, but there's an issue. Like there's an issue, like there's an actual issue. There's some stuff going on, where Bjorn comes out of being like, look, false alarm. Like here's the absolute proof. And I think people just will straight away kind of be like what? What do you mean? Like this is a massive global issue. But when you look at the numbers, I'm sure he talked it through on the books that he's written. It's like, hold on, like yes, it's an issue, but it's not as big as it's made out to seem. And like if you actually everyone just gets aggressive with it, like we're not going to be doing absolutely anything. Like you have need some coordinated regulatory changes for anything to happen. So I'm even feeling as we're talking about it, I'm like, hold on, but it's an issue. How can we look at it more as an issue?
Yeah, well, you touched on, I guess, something that Jordan Peterson noticed as well, which was that his style, his self-deprecation, like right at the end, he's like, yeah, just me and a bunch of eggheads, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
He held up one of the books and was literally saying like, don't buy this book because it's real jargon and whatnot. Yes, maybe he does have a marketing problem, an optics problem of saying, false alarm, putting it in people's faces. People tend to react not too well to that sort of thing. So I can totally see what you're saying in that point, which is, the data might support him, but data don't mean shit if you can't convince people with it.
True,
you can be the smartest person in the room, but if you can't communicate what it is that you've got in your head, doesn't matter. Nothing's going to happen. So I totally get that point, and I can see maybe he does need to work on presenting it in a different way or whatnot. But there's other people out there for that as well.
True. Yes.
It was I suppose what to do. So what to do at the end of all of this? What does he suggest actually is the best way to fix the climate change? And it's pretty minimal. So a small carbon tax that increases over time. So that's essentially just getting the ball rolling, I guess, to motivate people to start taking away those big easy ones. So the coal plant that's really outdated, super inefficient with how much it's actually burning, the thermal coal, the nasty, man, working in the mine, we sold some junk coal, man. I'm telling you, this shit, I couldn't believe anyone was buying this shit. It was like scraps and scrag heaps from back in the day. It's called box cut coal, where you do a box cut to get down and then sort of into the surface. And so when the coal seam comes up, it hits the surface. So coal seam's underground, then it comes up to the surface.
Yep.
And it's this top little surface coal, which is all weathered and shit. It's the carbon in it's just mixed with dirt and all sorts of crap. And we kept it at the mine, and it was just sitting there for ages, and everyone's like, man, can we get rid of this shit? It's just taking valuable space. We could be using that as a stockpile for other stuff, yada, yada, yada. Nah, one day we sold it to the Indians or the Chinese or something. It's get rid of this shit. Yeah. And we'd mix it with a little bit of good coal, but it was trash, man. It was absolute trash. So I'm
gonna keep the name of the big mining giant fucking in on this fucking episode.
Yeah. Does Kyron want a job again in that industry?
It's tomorrow on the ASX, whenever this gets posted, it's 3% fucking decline on the share. You just dropped your own share price. Well done.
Yeah. There are incentives. If you put a small incentive in place, you can get rid of some of those real bad ones. So once again, it's sort of triage in a way. You deal with the most important needs to be done right now. Get it out of the way. This stuff is bad.
Yep.
Done. So he suggests that innovation. So this is through R&D, green energy, I guess. So just the benefits that you can accumulate from innovating. Putting a couple of examples. We used to be real worried about whale oil. What are we going to do to replace the whale oil that we use to light our houses at night?
Made electricity.
Yeah, made electricity. Well, kerosene first, and then electricity after that. Yeah. So innovation just solves some problems. Like it just gets done.
I can't wait for the, you know what the next one's going to be, right?
What's that?
So in 30 years time, we won't have to worry about carbon emissions from clothing manufacturers.
Yeah.
We won't have to worry about it because we're all just going to be butt naked sitting at home with our virtual reality wearing whatever clothes we want. So like everyone will just be at home, maybe like a little bit of, we'll reverse back to like loincloths. You'll just be wearing something to cover your privates and you'll just be in virtual reality wearing whatever you want.
Yeah,
no carbon tax.
No, and then like the big deal will be like we're running out of like a loincloth supply.
Oh, yeah.
All the cotton
or string. The string's been used up.
Yeah. Another one, adaptation. So there's particularly prevalent in the book where he's saying, you know, all these people are like, it's so funny in a way because it's so stupid, but it's like damage from flooding is going to drown out, you know, 100 million people, and then but they don't take adaptation into account.
People will walk up.
People moving away from the you know, the flooded areas. People will use levee. I don't know how you say that. Levees? Is it levees?
Levees.
The whole of Holland is basically underwater, but they live there because they got some levees.
Yeah.
So, you know, just all this stuff. You know, people are going to die from the heat waves that are coming through. No, people are going to buy air cons and we're all going to be okay.
Yeah.
So that sort of stuff. And then there was a couple like geoengineering as a backup. So that's like the real zany ideas of, you know, using algae to collect carbon, and then that'll sort of be like as a way of capturing carbon, or chucking shit up into the air. There was, or like a wave skimmer thing, which would mix up this one. I couldn't believe this one. It was like a wave skimmer thing that would kick up ocean water into the air, and then that actually reflects more sunlight. So you just have like these trawler things going across the ocean, kicking up water, and yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so
that's weird. I've also heard about the ones where it's, if you covered, it was like not even sizable, like a 1/4% of the ocean with like mirrors, then that's it. You solved it.
Yeah.
So
shit like that, or
just do that. Just go put some mirrors in the fucking ocean. There you go. Yeah. What's a country we don't care about? North Korea. We'll just fill it with bloody like mirrors.
We'll
won't even put it on the ground. Like just levitate them above North Korea, and they'll all just believe. Like they'll just be like, oh well, it's just darkness.
Yeah. That's what happens.
Kim just giving us darkness forever now. That's what happens.
Yeah.
My one though, like one bit I took away as well was, you know, they had this whole conversation, money, right? This is where you should give it first. But again, and I don't know if this is my, you know, battling against it, Juan coming at it, but it's like, isn't it just better to give something rather than nothing? So isn't it better to give something rather than nothing? Now, sometimes it isn't. Like we just said, even if you give something, you're pissing it away. It's like you are actually actively losing that money, and it might even be
making things worse.
Yeah. So
be careful about that.
For some of them, you know, whether you're doing 60, 30, 20, I would say, who gives a crap? Just give to whatever the hell you want at that point, and you're going to be helping. Like, it's better to do that than to not do that. Once you're doing, then you can care about like, okay, can I do even better? But if you personally, like, I'm comparing it into the sense of, if you've got a personal matter with, let's just say, heart disease, and you're like, and someone's being like, oh, but if you give it to kidney disease or tuberculosis, you know, you're going to help out 3 more people with your money. Like, it's still fine for humans to go, I'm going to give it to heart disease because that's what I care about. And I'd say, fine, like, all for it, do it. Because that's like, sure, what the money's doing, like, I might be doing lesser. But to you personally, if that's going to make you at least give money, then hell, do that. But just be keenly aware that there's some places where you'll actively act against your, you know, the positive that you think you're going to be doing to go somewhere else entirely.
Yeah.
Like you might as well just like give money to a homeless person at that point. Like you're probably doing better to the world.
Yeah. See, I'd say like in that point, I totally agree. There's definitely room for you doing what personally feels good to you. So not everything needs that, you know, there really is no genuine altruism. There's, you know, you slightly helping out someone, but 99% of your actions are self-motivated. Like they're very self-interested. But I would say he's not particularly arguing in any of the things that I found for an individual to be taking action. This is more, I guess, trying to influence like the globe, like the discussion
like
as a
the
whole.
Consensus, yeah.
And then, you know, that would influence the sort of nation state levels where you've got billions of dollars at play. That's where you probably want to be thinking, I'd rather use this money in a good way rather than, spend it on, Malcolm Turnbull's aunt or something who has whatever, like liver spots or I don't know.
Yeah. Well, no, and I was about to say, like, it's different with like, even listening to that, it was, there's a difference between the individual entity and sort of the group or the nation entity doing something. So I can understand at the individual level, it's much more emotional, right? Humans are emotional, we're emotional creatures. But at the nation level, the consensus level, like logic should completely dominate the conversation. It shouldn't be like, we don't feel like helping out Uganda. Like, fuck them, who cares? No, like logical reasoning here is going to be like, we've got $1 billion to spend. We're going to spend it in the best place possible. Not like we're going to piss it away. We're going to give it to Joey's charity or Mansfield's charity for his hair. We're not doing that. All right, Mansfield, you're not giving hair. So, like just depends where you get the money from.
Yeah, you get off the call with like, Trump's just called up. You've had a bad chat with him. You're like, nah, fuck that guy. Cancel all agreements. Done.
Yeah, no, it doesn't work that way.
A couple of things from me that I actually took from it. So, man, he knew his stats ridiculously well. He was not looking at all for, searching papers for finding out numbers. He knew them all.
He's been working on it for a long time.
Back to front, yeah. I also like that he didn't let Jordan Peterson sort of drag him into the politics or blaming, which he sort of tried to do in a way, saying how he was noticing, there was a sort of like extreme leftist, almost like hijacking of the conversation to use it to attack or whatever. And he really sort of steered away from that and was like, no, I'm not going to blame anyone. And like, I'm not really that interested in that, to be honest.
No, that was good. That was a good way to push out from an area you don't want to have a conversation about.
Yeah, I think as well, he did try and talk about, how his methods were failing and arguments against them. They did spend a bit of time. Obviously, you can only do that to a certain degree, but it's always nice to see that. And it was, I guess, like seeing the pushback in... so I would actually say this book, like, you probably don't need to read this if you enjoy if you watch that. In essence, this book is... it's like a more concise way of doing it. So if you wanted to be more firmly convinced, if you wanted more data, if you wanted more visual effects, I would definitely say read the book. But one thing about, podcasts and having a discussion like they had on the channel was you can get those sort of pushbacks from Jordan Peterson saying like, hey, maybe you didn't, did you consider this? Maybe you didn't consider this. Whereas you can't do that in a book form. So I would say, read this book only if you're interested in learning way more. What you got there, Juan?
The final conclusion.
Some good charts, yep.
Yep.
And it was real funny that I guess like fundamentally that rich people are really selfish. That's like that's what I've taken away from this, which is one of the reasons the Western countries are so concerned about climate change. And he had this in the book Cool. It was like the person advocating for climate change, like who are they really trying to help? It's it's really like the old rich Danish guy trying to help himself, not the poor
person
kids.
barely even getting some water. Like they're not they're not like climate change. Like no, well and he talked about it in the podcast. It's the immediacy to what you can do. So because the other thing I was going to call out and just brought it to climate change in general, just everything. I liked his way of doing the ranking. I would have wished another level is just to have a priority and importancy, because those two things are different, right? Because then people could be like, well, climate change is a level of a priority as illiteracy, as does unwanted childbirth, all those sort of things. But the severity is very different because it's time dependent. So that takes into account, like if you are living in Africa or some other developing country, like to you, where the climate heats up a little bit or you get water that day, like it's more important that you get water. Like to you, like,
sure.
Sorry, buddy, Danish white dude, you're dying because I want some water right now. So there's importance in the levels of immediacy that take over as opposed to some broader things.
Yeah. And once again, that sort of stuff, like he touches on that a little bit in the book, but I wouldn't suggest you. I don't think you'd enjoy the book that much, Juan. So,
okay.
Let's kick it off with the
mere mortal moment.
The mere mortal
well,
moments.
I'll give you my mere mortal moment because I had to add that little bit at the end, so my mere mortal moment makes sense. So it's Let me give my bucks away to whomever I please, lest I don't give at all.
Oh, Jesus, man. That's the selfishest thing I've ever heard.
Lest I don't give it all.
Damn. All right.
Well, I feel like you don't want... I think most people might say this, like, if someone's telling you, like, oh, no, don't give to that charity, give to that charity, I'd almost impulsively be like, I'm not going to give now. Like, that's it. I'm not going to give.
I get it, man. I had that same exact feeling when I was reading the book More from Less, and a couple of... There was another one, Doing Good Better, I think it was actually called. That was the effective one.
Doing Good Better.
Yeah, and I had the same thing, man. I was like... I think there's an initial...
Don't tell me what to do, bitch.
Yeah, there's an initial, like, you wanting to point out everything that's wrong with it. I had the same sort of feeling when Sam Harris was talking about free will the first time I read that book. And I was like, no. I want my free will, damn it.
Let me show you how you're wrong, Sam Harris.
Yeah. And then I sort of like, I think it's one of those things you need to just gradually give it time.
Yeah, I think
hear
you
some
do,
other stuff, and then you'd be like, okay, whatever. Like,
Yeah,
but I wouldn't say he's particularly telling people what to do. He's sort of more just showing it in a way.
I agree.
So mine is more of a question for the listeners. So, will climate alarmism enter the wiki list of mass hysteria? So I'm wondering if potentially, let's just say 20 years down the track, it just gets sorted. We've
sorted it. We fixed it.
We've moved from whale oil to electricity. We've moved from climate alarmism to whatever the next thing is. Like, we're worried about the impact of our asteroids going off and hitting a random Martian in the
let's be serious right now. How many people in the last year and a half have been really caring about climate change? Like, I'm sure that, like, look, there's probably a dedicated group that there is, like, always have. That's fine. Just like there's a dedicated group of people caring about UFOs coming and killing us. That's like, there's groups that exist for everything. But overwhelmingly, I would be hard to press to find that the general consensus of humanities at this point is like, oh, climate change. I think a lot of people would be like, what if we get another round of COVID that's even more extreme? Or I think that's in the minds of a lot of people. Could it potentially spark that in the next 10 years? I think it'll come back, man. I think it'll come... Look, I won't say that it will never come back. Yeah. But I'm saying that, look, as you can see, like, all of a sudden there's more important things in the world than that. And that gives you a good reason of, like if it's not permanently the most important, then there's a clear difference about importance there. But then saying that, why isn't, like, the top one that's on that list always seen as the top one? So
Yeah. There's... No, I'm betting it'll be back in a full force.
Yeah,
within this year.
It's going to come back.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Clarence, put the
I'm hoping.
the gauntlet down.
I'm personally hoping it'll enter the mass hysteria list of just we were very concerned about something that just in the end either fixed itself or we fixed it and it just didn't need that level of alarmism, that level of I'm going to quit school for a week or whatever the kids... I didn't really follow the Greta Thunberg stuff, but we're going to intentionally make ourselves dumb to fix the world. Okay.
See how that works out.
See how that goes.
Okay.
Very good. All right. Thank you for joining us for climate change. Are we inane, stupid fools? Is my Hawaiian shirt presumptuous? Am I...
Are you expecting warmer weather, Karen?
Yeah. Well,
we're talking about climate change, and you're here like, looking like you're about to get the warmth.
I've got both bases covered.
Yeah, you got the beanie and
hot, I've got my shirt on. If it gets cold, I'll switch upside down, do handstands all the time, keep my beanie on, close to the ground, and I'll be sweet. But yes, thank you for joining us, people. Juan, what are we going to be discussing in the next episode?
Next episode? So we're going to go down the path of little bit of COVID learnings. Ooh. So just we did you could go all the way back on... Well, can you right now? Well, yes, you can go back on our audios, not on our videos. So let's be clear here.
Well, you can. No, you can. You have to go to the playlist. So if you go to the playlist, there's old Mere Mortal episodes, and you can just go to there.
Oh, cool. Okay, so you can't do that.
You can't type in Mere Mortal's coronavirus. It won't show up.
Good. You can go specifically to the playlist. Okay, good man. Yeah. So if you want to do that, obviously go check that out. We're not going to re-upload these things. What was that like? I think it was number 35.
Yeah?
Something calls out to me as being number 35.
So we had two. There was one which was deep. There was when we still had the GoPro. And so I'm pretty sure that was around like 15.
I should be able to do that. I've got it right here.
I've got my notes here.
Here we go. Coronavirus 36.
No.
36. Got it right here, mate. 36. Look at this.
That's impossible.
Immortals, episode 36. Impossible. Outcomes of coronavirus. Episode 36.
No.
So it might have been earlier. You're saying we talked about it earlier?
25.
Pandemics.
Coronavirus and pandemics.
Good. Okay, so we both got it right. We talked about coronavirus in both episodes.
If you really want to get into it, we had existential risk in number 19 as well. Which
did we? We did talk about a little bit about that.
I have pandemic written down here.
We preempted it. This is before coronavirus.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah.
You should have bet on the immortal stock.
Oh man.
No, but look, now we're going to be talking about the learnings from COVID. I mean, what can you do to prepare? Just think about the stuff that you yourself have maybe learned from COVID.
Yeah. I wouldn't
tune in.
I'll let you know right now. I don't think I've taken that much, but I've got a couple of things.
I've already written down some of my notes for it already. Yeah. And in going through it, I'm like, so I'll be like, oh, I was going to ask you similarly. And I'm like, oh man, Karen's not going to relate to a lot of these things. But there's some that it'd be interesting to talk about. So I think we'll have a different perspective of what COVID has.
My experience was definitely not the normal for me.
No, not the normal. Yeah. So, all right, Mere Mortals, that's it from us here at the Mere Mortal crew. Yep. Hope you enjoyed the conversation with climate change. As always, make sure you
tell a friend,
tell a friend, subscribe, etc., etc., etc. All the good stuff, folks. One out.
Karen out. Boom.